and welcome to That's Absurd, Please Elaborate, the science-ish podcast where we tackle ridiculous, insane, outlandish questions from listeners, people on the internet, guests, and we apply rigorous isn't the right word, it's kind of strong, but some rigorous research to actually answer them. I am the host half, Julian Huguet.
And I'm the other host half, Trace Dominguez, the one giggling over here by themselves. Thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you for listening to the show. You can find the show and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Please share it with your friends and tell other people about it because we're still fairly new. This is only episode 16, so it's really exciting. So, Julian, this week we have 2 questions from listeners. The first one is, who invented the lawn? From a listener named Brian. Thanks for submitting that, Brian. And the second one that we have is from a listener named 26 Matzo.
That's their name. It's on their birth certificate.
That's their name. That's what it says. And they want to know if you can wirelessly charge a device with Earth's magnetic field. So we're going to get into both of these and the science behind them and the ridiculousness of them. And I really hope that you all enjoy it. So do you want to go first or want me to go first?
I think you should go first. Is there more about how this question came about in this listener's mind?
There is more, yes. Brian told us a little bit about how they came about it. So he wrote, my uncle presented me with a question he and his friends came up with during a night at the local bar. He thought it was one of the funniest questions ever. And the question was, who invented lawns? So firstly, Brian and the listeners in general, please bring us these.
Uncle.
These are the best ones.
Yeah. We will accept an entire category of things I overheard my uncle say. At a bar. 3 beers deep.
So let me jump right into this, right onto the lawn here. It's an easy question to answer simply. And in fact, Brian included a little bit of extra information where he said, I thought it was one of the funniest questions ever. And I assumed livestock chewed down the grass and people liked the look of it. And as we became industrialized, we kept livestock but still liked the look, so invented lawnmowers. And Brian, you're not far off. It's not quite like that. But I think you're putting the cart before the horse, if you will. So this is an easy question to answer simply, but it's a tough one to answer thoroughly. So I'm going to try and move quick to try and get through everything that I wrote, because I wrote way too much stuff about this question.
Who knew the roots of lawns went so deep?
Yeah, they go so deep. So the short answer is that lawns come from Western Europe in the 1700s. Americans became obsessed with them, and they would start to show them off as a symbol of wealth. If you think of like high ceilings in your house, that shows off wealth, because what you're saying is, I can afford to heat nothing. When that is literally what it means. It's like a government building with a high ceiling was designed to show other foreign governments that you can afford to heat empty space. Like, that's what I'm doing here. And a lawn is, if you think of a lawn as something that has arable land, like land that can have stuff growing on it, you're saying, I can afford to grow nothing, but still put work into maintaining it.
So just the flex of being wasteful?
Yeah.
That's the entire point of lawns from the beginning?
Yes. And so the best thing about it, though, and the reason the long answer is way more complicated, is because grass is amazing. And it's an incredible plant, which we're going to learn a lot about. But also, Americans took this like lawn game to a whole other level because we made it up in our heads that it was more important than it is, which is also just very American for us to do. So that's really, really cool. So let's go back to the beginning, like the very, very beginning. But before I do that, I like to ask you, Julian, did you have a lawn growing up? And did you have to mow it?
I sure did have a lawn, but I didn't have to mow it because I was a bad, unproductive son.
Oh, you were my younger brother.
We actually had a beautiful garden. My dad's an amazing, self-taught gardener, and we had lots of actually useful trees, right? We had like fig trees, apple trees, and whatnot. But of course, like being Americans, some portion of our yard had a lawn in it.
Just grass.
Just some grass, there. So when you fall, you get all itchy, That, I assume, is the reason.
I feel like you had a lot of feelings about this lawn.
Punish me for playing outside. Yeah.
I mean, I would mow the lawn while listening to my Discman and the Astro Lounge album by Smash Mouth. A very core memory for some reason. But we had a really crappy lawn that my dad hated because it was mostly moss, and then it would have some grass, and I would have to mow it anyway because the grass still grew. You still have to mow the lawn. Man,
fighting the moss for dominance.
Yeah, and the moss mostly won until they cut down all their trees and the sun got there, and then they could grow actual grass. So,
oh my gosh,
I know.
Yeah,
he's like much happier with it now that
things are better suited for certain environmental conditions.
Oh my gosh,
anyway,
yeah, that's good foreshadowing. You bet your grass I had to mow that lawn. So, let's go back to the beginning of grass. The early Cretaceous period, 140 million years ago.
You were not kidding.
There are dinosaurs, there are trees, there's algae, there's leafy greens. Guess what there is none of?
Trees.
Grass. I said trees.
I wasn't listening.
So forests, they don't have meadows. There's no grasslands. There's no prairies. Ground cover is typically ferns and mosses. Then about 80 to 60 million years ago, almost 66 million years ago, right at the end of the Cretaceous, before the dinosaurs disappear, we get this new plant that evolves called grass. And it uses photosynthesis, but it's more efficient than trees and ferns. They call it C4 photosynthesis. It's great for the hotter, drier climates that are all over the world, and it's great for dry soils. It doesn't need a tree trunk or a stem. The leaves just come right out of the roots. And the biggest thing is, this new plant doesn't need to be eaten by other things to spread. Pollen floats on the wind, which means it can colonize areas that animals don't go to, like hard-to-reach spots, open areas, and rocky areas like mountains, which is super cool.
And thus began the invention of allergies.
Sorry, everyone.
Thanks, grass.
And thus began the Claretaceous period. D.
Yeah, everything's kind of foggy after this point.
The Benadrylian period.
Ancient histamine. Okay,
Ancient histamine. That's good. So today there are 10,000 species of grass. That's more than all birds in terms of species. It has a huge range. Can you name some grass? And I don't mean like fancy turf grass. I mean like name some grass.
Yeah, you got Pineapple Express.
Okay.
And,
I'm thinking like bamboo.
Oh, yeah.
That's a grass.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Shoot.
Kentucky bluegrass.
See,
I don't think I'm doing
most
a good
people
job
think
of this.
of turf grass, which is what we use for our lawns. But grass is actually rice is a grass.
Oh.
Wheat is a grass. Rye is a grass. Oat, corn, barley, sugar cane. All of these are species of grass. Isn't that amazing?
I had no idea.
Right?
I didn't grasp.
Oh, God. There's going to be more. And I'm actually not mad about it. It's so good.
Pun-heavy episode.
We are
I think
fielding
we've done
so many puns. I'm reusing that one from earlier because
the
it's
audience
just really good.
Turning green. Okay.
So if we fast forward millions of years, the grass has changed all sorts of things. It's changed the soil by depositing minerals and providing places for other animals to live. It's changing the landscapes. Now we have a third of the planet is covered in grass. We've got prairies and steppes and savannas, and animals are living there, and they can eat all of this nutrient-rich grasses like elephants and horses and herd animals and so on and so forth. And eventually other animals come out to hunt those big animals. Maybe they come down out of trees and start walking upright, and they start hunting them on grasslands, you know.
Oh my God, chimpanzees riding horses? That's terrifying.
Apex predator horses. See our last episode 15.
See the Halloween Spectacular. Okay.
So now we have humans living amongst the grasses, and we are domesticating them for food, like the things I mentioned, rice and wheat and barley and other things. And it's just grass. It's literally just grass. And we use it to make everything from bread to sugar to alcohol and all sorts of things. And we're cultivating all of these things so that we can build an agricultural society, and we don't necessarily have to run around hunting all the time. And the lawn, as we know it today, comes out of this idea of cultivating nature. We're starting, of course, sort of like your dad, where we have a bit of plot of land and we start to grow fruits and plants that we can use and to eat. And we got really good at this over thousands and tens of thousands of years. And we start to make gardens that aren't working gardens. So the lawn we know it comes out of the idea of a garden. It wasn't really nature. It was separate, a human-controlled kind of natural space. And we have working gardens, which are like for herbs, vegetables, orchards for fruits, trees for food, irrigation, all of that thousands and thousands of years ago. And we start to get pleasure gardens with the elites, things with like big trees and vines and canals, cultivated plants that we've brought from everywhere else. I found some really cool examples of this. So you know who Pliny the Younger is, if you're in the history game at all.
I gotta stop making dumb jokes every time you lob a question at me. Yeah, but he's like an ancient Roman historian. I was gonna say brews beer, right? But
well, yeah, if you're in
there's like Pliny the Elder beer. Anyway,
yeah,
yeah, he's a I want to say Roman historian from antiquity.
Yeah, he's an ancient Italian, I guess, or what is now Italy. Historian. His father, actually, or maybe grandfather, now I can't recall, Pliny the Elder, was a prolific writer, and he died in the Vesuvius explosion at Pompeii.
Oh.
But he left behind an estate and all of his writings to Pliny the Younger, who inherited it and planted this incredible garden with a lawn, and there was no mown grass on this lawn, but they did call it a lawn, which I think is interesting. And I have a quote here that says, "You descend from the terrace by an easy slope adorned with the figures of animals in a box facing each other to a lawn overspread with soft, almost liquid acanthus," which is a leafy plant. "This is surrounded by a walk enclosed with evergreens shaped into a variety of forms." This is from letters of Pliny the Younger in 62 CE. So like 2,000 years ago. And they had this beautiful garden, and there was a lawn in it. And it was considered like, wow, but it wasn't grass, not yet. Then in the 7th or 8th centuries, BCE, so another few hundred years before that even, they did have gardens then too, cultivated orchards and flowering plants, olive trees, and these were mentioned in Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey. And they were more like priesty. They were to be strengthening relationships with the gods, and they had like shade trees and flowers and stuff. And then, of course, there's one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, also in the 8th century BCE. And if they existed, they were supposed to be very beautiful, but they're in the modern day country of Iraq. And if you go a little further into the future, you get the Sakoteiki, which is the records of garden making in Japan, which is the oldest known text on garden planning. And the Japanese had what they would call, and I'm probably going to butcher this because I don't speak Japanese, but ishi wo taturu koto, which is the act of standing up stones, I guess. But anyway,
I would take your word for it.
Yeah, they didn't always build gardens that would be like, here is plants. It was like, this is supposed to evoke the feeling of a river. It's a bridge over some rocks and some smaller rocks or some sand. And so it was like these ideas of natural spaces that necessarily weren't actually natural. And grass was for food. Grass was tall and like a savanna and where animals lived until colonizers showed up.
Oh, it's inevitable every time.
Yeah.
All right, what do we do?
Okay.
What did we do?
So, a few hundred years after all of this, colonizers arrived. Then we start, the Europeans start colonizing all over the world, and they show up in these places where there have been humans for a long time, and they're like, oh, these are wild, untouched places, which is just not even close to true. There were landscapes in the Americas that had been tended by First Peoples and Native Americans for literally thousands of years. There were trails and roads and orchards and working gardens. What they didn't really have is the aristocracy of pleasure gardens, the way that the Europeans were used to. And of course, they didn't have pastures for livestock, which the Europeans wanted, because there weren't pastures on the east coast of the Americas. They weren't native to that area. They had instead, in that area, created landscapes for hunting and fishing, which is a completely different landscape. grasses in New England were low nutrition grass that went dormant in the winter. And the colonizers showed up and needed grass that would grow year round and wouldn't be bad for winter time. So they killed the native grasses and decimated them with their livestock, and then started planting grasses that they brought from Africa, like Bermuda grass and Guinea grass. And they brought over clover and weed, like not weed, but like weeds, like dandelions and things. Kentucky bluegrass, not from Kentucky. It's from the Middle East and Europe.
No, Kentucky, Iraq.
Yeah, Kentucky, Iraq.
The other Kentucky.
That one. Yeah, Kentucky, Poland.
I do think it's funny. A lot of places, you know, on like the East Coast do have like these ancient city names. Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
Memphis, Tennessee.
Alhambra, Illinois, which is pronounced Alhambra, not Alhambra. The Moorish mosque in the south of Spain.
Right.
Beautiful.
I always thought that's really funny.
It's really
anyway,
good.
It's easy to get confused though sometimes.
Yeah. Which I'm glad you bring up that too, because there were colonizers from all over Europe. So like California's turf grass was brought there by Spanish colonizers. And so it's different grass. So when people are like, oh, well, there's different grass here than there is there. Some of it's native, but a lot of it is just from other places. Like the English and the French and the Spanish brought the stuff that they were used to the places that they had colonized. And then finally in the 1700s, we get back to the simple answer. The Palace of Versailles had these massive gardens, and these gardens were created and built in order to show off the power of the French nobility. And within the gardens was this area called the tapis vert, or green carpet. And it was created and built as a lawn of grass. And it was the first time a lot of people had seen stuff like that wasn't some other kind of plant. And the nice thing about grass was that it held up well to being walked on and being like interacted with. And it was, and so the king of gardeners is credited with this idea, André Lenôtre. And he was born into a family of gardeners to the king, and he had all these design ideas for gardening.
Can we have a policy of saying French names as anglicized as possible?
Sorry. André Lenôtre.
Oh, it hurts.
He was born into this gardeners to the king family, and he was really good at it. His design ideas are still used in gardening today. And some of the most influential gardeners of the last 300 years essentially use the same ideas that he was using and has just expanded on them. So like Friedrich Law Olmsted, who's very well known in American gardening and American landscape design, uses a lot of these same ideas as well that were pioneered by André Lenôtre in France in the 1700s. And in case you're curious, it's creating movement through light movement, so combinations of shade and sun to create contrast, creating moments of closed architecture of plants and then open architecture, so you like walk through an area and you get to a wide open area and you're like, wow. And you turn these flat, monotonous pieces of land into these visually striking gardens that look like they go forever by using forced perspective and all these other ideas.
Wow.
Really smart.
So this guy's like the Da Vinci of gardens.
He's literally called the king of gardeners.
Amazing. Amazing that he was just like that before this person. Like,
there were gardens, but they were gardens, like, they were fine.
They were the cave painting equivalents of gardens. And then here comes this guy and he's doing perspective.
And you're just like, holy
light
crap.
And shadow.
So his gardening work influenced, quote,
would you say he's outstanding in his field?
Oh! Julian! Yes.
Damn it, that was good.
Yes, I would say that. He influenced the gardening and landscape design of Spain, Italy, Prussia, Austria, and Russia for more than a century. And of course, through that, the United States. Washington, D.C.'s architect Pierre Charles L'Enfant was inspired by Versailles and Lenôtre. And those ideas are still in use today. So I read an article and they were saying the 9/11 memorial in New York, you can trace back to like the design of it and like the way it's put together to ideas pioneered by ALN, because that guy is apparently sick.
I had no idea.
Isn't that cool? So Lenôtre enlarged the tapis using grass that he could find that would be like specific and grow in a specific way, because there's all these different types of grass, and it's considered one of the world's first lawns the way we think of it now. And it became this idea of wealth and status. And the French and the Spanish and the English colonizers didn't just bring their people to the New World, they also brought their values. So George Washington's Mount Vernon, he's English. He was English until he became American like everybody else who was part of the Revolution. And so his idea were English gardens, which had little lumps and hillocks and flowering plants. And like, so at Mount Vernon was a bowling green and a deer park, which are common elements of English garden design. Then Thomas Jefferson, he went to Versailles. And he saw the tapis vert, the green carpet. And he said, whoa, I need one of those at Monticello, and put one in. And it became like this influential urban landscape design in the U.S., in the brand new U.S. And so at the time, we were building European style. So we had like little gardens behind our houses, maybe a flower garden if you could afford it in the front to show status on the street. So think like, streets in New York and Baltimore where there's no real front yard. It's just like the buildings on the street. And that's how it was built for a long time. And Le Nôtre and the aristocracy were using, at the time, grazing animals to keep their lawns cultivated. But if they didn't have a grazing animal, like Brian had guessed, but if they didn't have one, they would use scythes, sickles, and even hand shears, because they could afford to have people out there, like, cutting them.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't them. George Washington's not out there with a little pair of scissors
just like
away
got
on
it.
the grass. Yeah.
Nope.
No.
So the first lawnmowers appeared in the 1830s, and it was this dude who was at a local cloth mill where they were like shaving the cloth with this blade. And he's like, oh, you could use that for grass. And so he made a lawnmower that was really hard to push, but it was a human powered where you like push it. And it's essentially the same design that we use now, where it's like the little spinny blades that as you push them, they kind of spin around. And we still use that. The American Revolution happens, and we keep our cultural ideas, and we still get them from Europe, but now no one is going there because there's a revolution on. And if you're not aware, it starts 1776. It doesn't end for a long time. Like, the American army doesn't show up in places like in the north of the U.S. after the war ends. So there are people that aren't really getting a lot of news for a decade or more about stuff, and it's not like they're gonna wait.
Like people in Maine are like, what, so did we win the war or what?
I think they knew that we won, but there wasn't exactly like the U.S. wasn't present. There wasn't like military. It wasn't like you're sitting in Washington, D.C. and you're like, hey, we won yesterday. Great. Everybody knows. It was like, we may have learned it weeks later, but there was still no like American presence for a while. And so it's like there's...
the map doesn't just change colors like in a video game.
It's like,
oh, territory
just
conquered.
more complicated than that. And so what instead you got is news, like literature, descriptions of these landscape designs, lithographs, I'm sure, and also paintings and landscapes that if you know anything about paintings, they are fake. Every painting is fake. No painting is a photograph. None of them. They are all made up. So, like, in movies, when they're like, I have painted this king, and so I have a sword holding the sword above their head. It's like, you really think that the king stood there for 5 days and wait? No, they looked at the king, they watched the king for a bit, and they went and painted the king. Jeez, come on, get your heads out of the movies.
Out of your grass.
Yeah, get your heads out of your grass. So paintings not being photos, landscapes are almost entirely, not always, but either inspired by real landscapes or completely made up. And yet that is what Americans used to decide what they should aspire to be.
You mean to tell me the Windows XP background is a lie?
That's called Bliss, and it's a photo from Napa Valley, California. I've been to that hill.
Yeah, actually.
I've been to that hill.
Wow.
I went and looked up where it was and drove up there because I was like, man,
you would.
I would. It didn't look as nice.
You nerd. Well, yeah, all paintings are fake.
So I think it's very American that we were like, oh, the French, they are putting grass on the ground. Really? Show me. Well, I have no pictures, but I think it looks like this. And so I'm going to try really hard to make it look like that, even though I have no evidence that it actually looks that way. And then I'll judge everyone who doesn't do it to my level.
Well, it's funny. I was going to say, when you brought up Pliny the Younger talking, like writing a description of his own yard to somebody else, and he's like, oh, it's just amazing. What if there was just like a broken down Chevy on cinder blocks and like
That's
all
funny.
this plastic trash, you know? But like in his correspondence, he's like, you'll simply have to visit my house. It's fabulous. Unfortunately, I'm still trying to extricate my father's corpse from the molten ash in Pompeii, so I'm terribly busy at the moment.
But at some point when you visit, it's going to be lovely.
And then 2,000 years later, people are like, wow, this Pliny the Younger guy really had an amazing yard. We should give him credit for the lawn
I did like
concept.
the soft, nearly liquid acanthus. And I'm just
It really
wow.
reeked to me of somebody like flexing about like, my house is so great.
It did feel that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it smacked of that. I'm sorry, Pliny, but you're coming off as a bit arrogant.
Look, I'm not surprised. He's literally Pliny the Younger. Poor guy. He's always had this like, oof. Can I just be Pliny? I have to be the younger? God, I'm a 50-year-old man.
Especially once your dad dies, then you're the only Pliny.
Nope, you're still the younger.
You're just Pliny.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's like that old joke. They don't call me the bridge builder, do they? Anyway, so Google it, kids. Don't
Google it, kids.
Yeah, don't Google it, kids. So as the USA gets on in years and we start to become our own thing using fictional ideas of what a tapivere might look like, into the 19th and early 20th century, blue-collar Americans still had no front yard. They were a factory worker or a tenant farmer or a sharecropper. They didn't have a front. You're not going to go home and tend a lawn, right? There's no worker protections. There's no hourly, like you don't work 40 hours a week. You just work constantly. And so you don't have lawns. Those aren't a thing in America, even up until right before the baby boomers are born. So we're starting to see only lawns post-World War II with the introduction of tract housing, which, if you're not aware, because maybe you've never been to California or you're not in a place where the housing boom has hit you, it's building lots and lots of houses all in the same way. So like maybe you have 3 different housing designs or 4, and the whole neighborhood looks like that. And that's tract housing. You're building it. A developer owns that plot of land, built 100 houses on it, and sells them, in this case, in post-World War II, to like young families who have now come home from the war and want the American dream, whatever that means to them, because they're sort of inventing it. It's also, by the way, sidebar, why California doesn't have basements. It has nothing to do with earthquakes. And in fact, a plot like the flat slab that California houses are built on is less good for earthquakes than a basement would have been. But when you're building 100 houses really quickly, just put down a slab and put a house on it. So we don't have basements, not because it has anything to do with water or earthquakes. It's just cheap houses, guys. Capitalism.
Way to build. Just crank out those little boxes on the hillside.
Crank them out. So tract housing had to be designed, though, and upper middle class people could afford lawns at that time. And so because they wanted the middle class to have this like, ooh, we can be fancy too, when they built tract housing, they put in space for lawns, even in places that didn't make sense to have lawns, like the deserts of California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas.
And the Colorado River wept.
Yeah, and so you could have easily added a garden instead of a lawn, but my guess is that some people felt that didn't look as nice. They wanted to have these like manor-style lawns, like a tapivere, more than a complex garden, which might have actually been useful and grown food, but we just wanted this like class system.
Oh, but eating food right off the tree is for poors.
Look,
you know,
for the pavos.
I feel strongly about this. Like a lot of people in my experience in the States is like, you know, if you like pick an apple that's just there, they're like, you can't do that. And I'm like, but it's an apple. Like,
it's on a tree right there.
Like, it's like a really foreign idea, I feel like, to a lot of people.
Food comes from the store, not from the plant. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. So at the point that this happens, this is what we see now. So when Brian was like, I assume we saw grassland that was being eaten by animals and we made lawns from that. It's sadly darker. It was more, we saw rich people with their land and we said, I want to be rich too. And one way to maintain that was to have grassland, but then there are animals on it. And that doesn't really work in tract housing. And instead we end up kind of aping this idea of the tapis vert from a French palace where they had people who would cut it with shears, and instead made everybody else just do that. And now, according to a 2005 NASA study, there are more lawns in the United States than there are acres of irrigated cornfields. 3 times more lawn than corn. Isn't that crazy?
And all of it needs water, even if it's in a place that naturally doesn't get a lot.
Yeah, that's right. And I called my mother, who is a master gardener, to ask her about this. She essentially says, we're moving away from lawns as like a thing. The National Garden Clubs are saying, replace your lawns with pollinator plants and things that actual animals and insects and things that live in your area want, as opposed to just grass. The thing about grass and the way lawns that we have them now, to kind of recap, is it was 18th century French aristocrats that liked the look of a small carpet of green amidst a sprawling garden, so we copied the look in the United States because our own elites like that look, and then artists and writers talked about how amazing it looked, so we destroyed our natural landscape to accommodate that. And when the middle class was created, we destroyed it further by taking grass from all over the world to pretend that it lives in Kentucky or elsewhere, and it doesn't, and then we spend billions of dollars a year to maintain that fantasy with a flowering plant that will never flower. And in our hubris, we have now spread this around the world, where there are Americans who work for American companies in Saudi Arabia having lawns, and they require the equivalent of 200 gallons of drinking water per person a day to maintain. So in the end, as Michael Pollan, an author and food writer, once said, because again, grassland is, if you think about it, like wheat. They have flowers and seeds, but lawns is grass, and so it should have that. And as he wrote, lawns are nature, purged of sex and death. No wonder Americans like them so much.
Oh. Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow, we got really dissed by way of greenery. Ouch.
He's from Berkeley, so he's kind of...
Also, Michael Pollan writing about grass, amazing.
Yeah, right? Really great.
Yeah,
Really
fantastic.
great. So I learned a lot about lawns. It was really fun. I'm sorry that was so long, but man.
That was so long.
Yeah, sorry, I could cut it back, but I didn't.
I loved it because actually just the way that Brian framed it of, hey, my uncle, they were drinking and they thought it was just so ridiculous. Like, who came up with the lawn? But I love it because it's like the beginning of a very important question where you have to reassess what you assume is a normal thing because it came from somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's important to double check and be like, is this still a good thing to do?
Right?
Yeah. Like I just came back from Las Vegas and there were signs all over the place that were like, you can only water your yard 3 days a week. It's the law. And I thought they should have put an N on there. Could have been it's the lawn. But anyway, it's the lawn. But yeah, and I'm like, well, this is so ridiculous. We're in the middle of the most desert place I can imagine in Las Vegas, and people are still like, I need a lawn.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, because they were told.
You don't.
Because they were told. They were told this is what it means to be middle class.
Yeah, the people around me will think less of me if I don't have a lawn. Yeah. If I have native plants that are scruffy and spiky because they're suited for this place that I live in, my neighbors might be kind of rude and weird to me.
Yeah, it's very odd, but it comes from people. We have lawns because we have people.
They haven't woken up to the big lawns scams. They need to go drinking with Brian's uncle, and then they'll see.
That's great. Well, thank you for listening to my... Oh, man, I wish I had a good lawn pun for that.
This is an evergreen story.
It is. Oh, God. You're so much faster at this than I am right now. I don't know. I'm just so tired and hot from talking about lawns and mowing them. And I hated mowing the lawn. Oh. Let's go and take a break and, have a nice tall glass of water and come back and get to Julian's question about could you wirelessly charge a device with the Earth's magnetic field? Julian, give me your best dinosaur roar.
Oh, God, an asteroid! It's horrible!
Wow, that was not where I expected that to go. We're popping in before the show to tell you about I Know Dino. It's a dinosaur podcast.
You know, we think of those dinosaurs being this thing that's been dead for tens of millions of years. Even so, studying dinosaurs can still teach us stuff that is relevant to the world today.
Yeah, like climate models to help us understand global warming.
Migration patterns of dinosaur lineages, they tell us about Earth's changing continents.
We can also study dinosaur diets, what plants lived then, and maybe what animals and how they interact.
And, this is super cool, many dinosaur injuries, paleopathologies, they're the first known occurrences of diseases.
And they talk about all this kind of stuff on I Know Dino. It comes out every week with new dinosaur stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Like, I hadn't heard of a lot of these, which is pretty cool.
You can find I Know Dino on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are. And if you found us, you can probably find them. Go check them out. Welcome back to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. Trace, thank you for that snippet about lawns.
It was really a grassroots effort.
Yes! Yes!
I did it!
Pun achieved!
We did it!
Yes! Took the entire break to think of that one. Anyway. Okay. Well, now it is time for the question that I researched for this episode, which came from 26 Matzo, who, again, I assume that's not the person's name. But 26 Matzo asked, could you wirelessly charge a device with the Earth's magnetic field?
Whoa.
And I love it.
The Earth has a magnetic field. We need that. Could we use that power? I think it makes total sense.
Right. It makes sense to, like, when you start to think about it. But the question is, you might want to know, like, what would this underlying principle be? How does it work? Which is also a very important thing to understand for, like, how wireless charging works in general with, you know, your new phones that you just sit on a little pad and it charges up. And you might be like, what is this witchcraft, right? Like, normally 200 years ago, 400 years ago, that's a stake burning. I don't know if anybody in 1820 would necessarily burn a witch, but
maybe
400 years ago, this is just absolute wizardry. But how does it work? So a very important figure in understanding the relationship between electricity and magnetism is Michael Faraday. You've probably heard of him. There's tons of things.
Great F1 driver.
It's
like a totally an F1 driver name. No.
I don't even know. I'm trying to think.
It'd be just a good F1 driver name, okay?
Michael Faraday.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But then when he has a bad race, it'd be like, ooh, not a fair day for Faraday. Yeah, it'd be great. Anyway. So Michael Faraday was a British scientist in the basically early to mid 1800s, did a ton of experiments related to electricity and magnetism. And one day he was performing an experiment where he has like a coil of wire that's going around like an iron circle. Mm-hmm. And this wire, it's like hooked up to a battery, but the switch isn't closed. So there's no current running. And then on the other side of this iron circle, he's got another coil of wire and just like a little thing to measure if there's a current.
Got it.
So when Faraday closes that switch and completes the circuit on the side with the battery, the needle on the other loop of wire goes up for a second and then drops down again. So Faraday was assuming, because Faraday had realized that there's a connection between electricity and magnetism. And he's realized that, you know, when a electric current is moving through a wire, it creates a magnetic field. So it'll magnetize this piece of iron. Will this magnetic field in this piece of iron cause a current in the wire? And he was expecting it to be sustained, but what he found was it only created a current for just a brief moment, just right when he turned on the switch, and then it stopped.
Yeah.
So
and
he starts doing
I'm sure he tested it by like on, off, on, off, on, off. Okay. Yeah.
Flip it on, flip it off.
No,
flip it on.
That doesn't.
Turn around really quick see if it like.
What if I look away
when you're not looking? Yeah. Try and catch it. You know, like you try and do when you're looking in the mirror. You're like, oh,
wait, what?
Oh.
Can I see my own ear?
Myself looking away.
No, I can't.
Yeah. Brilliant scientist. So Faraday is trying to figure out what's going on, and he starts performing all these experiments. And he's got like his loop of wire that can detect if there's a current, And, he tries it with this other loop of wire with the battery and the switch, and he puts one near the other, and again, opens and closes the switches, and he sees, okay, it does create a current. But again, just for a split second. Then he takes a magnet, and he starts, moving it between, this loop of wire that can detect a current. And as he moves it, there's a current. But when he stops moving it, there's no current.
No current.
No current. Or he takes the loop of wire and then a magnet, and he moves the wire, back and forth with the magnet, and again, every time he moves it, current. Every time he stops moving it,
no current.
No current. Gasp. What's going on? So it turns out that they discovered, these scientists, Faraday and then later Lenz, who was a German physicist who was inspired by Faraday, they realized that yes, electricity flowing through a wire, that causes a magnetic field, and a magnetic field can cause an electrical current, but only if this wire is moving through the electric field, basically, right? Actually, there's a better way of defining it, and I'll get to that.
Okay.
But when you think about a magnet, right, you ever do the iron filing thing as a kid?
Where you pick up iron filings, or you have one of those toys where it's the iron filings are trapped in between layers and you can move them around and draw. And
right.
They're always kind of freaky looking.
You make fake bearded.
Yeah, you put
Willy
mustaches on people, but if you break it, then you end up with this really fuzzy looking magnet that's freaky.
Right.
That's freaked me out.
Freaky fuzzy magnet.
Freaky Fuzzy Magnet, good band name.
Another one. Put it on a t-shirt. Right. Have you ever taken a magnet and then sprinkled the iron filings and shaken them and see where the lines they form
classic
are,
physics
right?
experiment.
Exactly. So those iron filings are lining up with these magnetic field lines coming off of the magnet, right? And they travel, the convention when you're drawing them in a physics problem or whatever is they point from the South Pole to the North Pole, right? They form an unbroken loop, right? So your compass that you might have in your hand is a traditional one from the Boy Scouts, is a magnet, and all it's doing is aligning with the Earth's magnetic field. And it's pointing towards magnetic north, right?
Yeah.
Which is funny when you think about it, because north poles and south poles of magnets are attracted to each other. So this gets really confusing when you realize that Earth's north magnetic pole is the south pole of a magnet.
The North Pole's the South?
The North Pole is the
South Pole.
Is the South Pole of the magnet.
God, never thought of that.
Because the compass's North Pole is attracted to it.
The South Pole and the North. Oh, wow. Okay.
I know. Isn't that confusing? Right. So these magnetic field lines, though, right, that the iron filings make, you can think of, a group of them as a bundle of magnetic field lines.
Free sticks?
Bundle of sticks, yeah.
Just free little
sticks, right? So what these scientists like Faraday and Lenz realized is if you change how many of these field lines are passing through a loop of wire, like a closed circuit, that causes a current to flow, right? But only when this amount of field lines changes.
So you have to move, if you have 3 field lines and they all pass over the wire, you've made 3 whatever. But if you have 1 field line, it's a weaker current.
Well, the field, what's important is that it changes, right?
It.
So you've got, think of a hoop of wire, right? And if you've got 3 of these lines going through it, nothing happens if it doesn't change. But if you move the coil or the magnet or whatever, and then 2 of these lines are going through the loop, that's a change, and now there will be a current.
Yeah,
right?
Got it.
And the reason for this is because electricity and magnetism are related, a magnetic field has a force that it applies to the charged particles in your wire, right? The electrons that move around.
They're moving them around.
But eventually, if there's no change, the 2 forces balance each other out, because the electrons, when they get moved, they create a magnetic field of their own pointing the other way.
Jerks.
So the only way to keep things moving using magnets is you have to keep changing the amount of field lines passing through this
the
loop.
Loops.
Right. And this concept is called flux.
Yeah.
Flux capacitors, the thing that everybody thinks of.
The field lines in flux.
Yes. So, well, you have to change the amount of flux.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yes.
Capacitor.
I know it's a little hard to think of, like,
capacity
oh God,
of the flux.
Right. And you can do this if you, like, move the wire, like, in and out of the magnet's, field, or you turn the loop, right? If you think of, like, a hula hoop in the rain, if the hula hoop's, like, parallel to the ground, then the most amount of rain will pass through the hula hoop.
Right.
But if you change that 90 degrees, now no rain can pass through the hula hoop. So in this analogy, right, that's the changing flux. The flux is the amount of rain passing through the hoop. Right. And if you change it, electricity and magnetism is like...
great for podcasts. Really good.
It's my weakness. Okay, but this is a really, really important concept that underlies how we generate power for us to use. Right?
Like when a power generator, the work is done by, say, water going through a dam or something, and it's spinning a magnet inside of a coil, moving the flux around and generating the power. So if you don't have if you don't have the magnet moving so that the flux is applied, then you don't get any electricity out of your generators.
Yes, or the coil moving, right? What's important is one is moving relative to the other.
Which is also why we can't generate power from nothing. You need to do work in order to generate, to either move the magnet or move the coil, or both.
You're just converting one form of energy to another. That's just the rule. There's no free lunch, right? With water, you're changing that potential energy of the water that's stored in the dam. It's up high. You're letting gravity pull the water down, and it transfers that energy to the turbine and spins this coil of wire in a magnet. That's also why our current that comes out of your wall is alternating current, right? Mm-hmm. Because when the wire is spinning through the magnetic field, the direction that the current travels in will change. It'll go back and forth, right?
Basically, it's like moving back and forth over and over again.
Yeah, it'll go one way, and then, like, when it's through one half of the rotation, and it'll go the other way through the other half of the rotation. So it jiggles back and forth. So that's alternating current for you, okay? So now let's bring this all back to the original question, which is, could you wirelessly charge a device with the Earth's magnetic field?
Yeah.
Well, the Earth has a magnetic field. It's very weak. The measurement of it, like Tesla is the measurement of magnetic field strength, right?
Okay. It's like 1 Tesla or 0.1 Tesla or whatever. 10 Tesla, whatever it is.
50 microtesla
wow.
is the Earth's magnetic field strength. So it's very, very, very tiny strength of the magnetic field, okay?
Yeah.
If you have a device that's just a closed circuit that moves and changes the flux passing through it from the Earth's magnetic field, you will, in fact, create some forces, some electromotive force within the wire. And, electrons in your circuit are going to want to move one way or another, depending on how you're moving it through this field.
Yeah.
So we actually do use this concept for certain things, like the compass in your phone. Remember earlier I said, if you have, like, the old school kind of magnetic compass, right?
Yeah.
The compass in your phone obviously doesn't have, like, a real needle that's, like, suspended.
There's not just a teeny itty bitty needle inside of my phone telling me which way magnetic north is. It's teeny tiny.
At least not for compassing purposes. There's not a teeny itty bitty needle. That's to inject the microchip. Okay.
Oh, got it. For the 5G, when it gets the 5G. Got it. Understood.
What your phone does, you ever, like, try and calibrate your compass with your phone?
I haven't tried, but I'm sure I could do that. Sure.
If you ever do it, right, you hold up your phone and your phone goes, hey, I need you to wave me around and then I can tell you which direction I'm pointing. What your phone is doing is it's measuring how the electrons in a certain sensor get pushed around as you move it through, the field that you're standing in. What? And then it can tell you, okay, based on how these electrons, the force on these electrons, where they were pushed, I can tell you which way the magnetic field is pointing.
So it's feeling the Earth's magnetic field?
Yes, it's feeling, and here's the thing, is the maximum force on these electrons happens when they move perpendicular to the field, right? So east to west.
Got it.
And there's no force when they move parallel to the field, so north to south.
So they can math that out.
Yeah, they can figure out, okay, that you have to move it in a figure of 8, configuration, as a matter of fact. And that gets you to move it, like all degrees, and it can tell, all right, when I go this way, I feel the electrons feel the most force, and when I go this way, they feel no force. So that's north, and that must be east or west or whatever.
Right. Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's not for charging, but it is a concept for like calibrating your direction without the need for like old school magnets in a suspended compass, which I thought was freaking cool.
That is super cool.
I know. Okay, so more than that, we've also done experiments with using like wires and Earth's magnetic field to generate like a voltage. In 1996, astronauts aboard a space shuttle deployed a satellite at the end of a 20-kilometer conducting tether.
That's a long tether.
Very long tether, right? And
it's like
the shuttle,
12 and a half miles.
In American, yeah.
In American.
So the shuttle is whipping around the Earth in orbit, right? So it's also traveling through this magnetic field very, very fast.
Yeah.
So it built up a voltage of 3,500 volts.
That's a lot of volts
in this tether. Yeah. So it's a ton, but the reasons for this were it was moving really fast and the wire was really, really long.
12 miles long.
Right.
20 kilometers
and eventually,
long.
I think this tether actually snapped. I remember when they were doing a superconducting experiment. But if it hadn't snapped from like overheating, basically, eventually the forces would balance out, right? Like, and then it would just be stuck at like that potential. But it's not a circuit, so there's nowhere for those electrons to go.
Right.
So it's just like, cool, we built up a huge voltage.
They couldn't just like tap into it with another 20-kilometer long thing and alligator clips, and then at the other end of that is a resistor so it doesn't explode it, and then your phone plug.
Yeah, all this to charge their 1996 Nokia. That was the backup system. And it wasn't to call Earth. It was if they got stranded, they could just huck it and the Nokia would survive re-entry. It would probably cause a major explosion wherever it landed. Nokia would survive.
Quite large. Yeah, the Nokia would be fine. It would start ringing once it landed.
Robust. Just, built like Thor's hammer, those things. Incredible. Now, here's an important concept to understand is that the amount of voltage that you're going to build up as you change, the flux through a closed circuit of wire, or the amount of current that you're going to generate, it's going to depend on the strength of the magnetic field you're in and on the size of the loop of, conducting material. Right? There's a math equation for this.
Is it calculating your flux capacity?
No, technically no. I have to be accurate.
Technically no.
Technically no.
Jokily yes.
But yeah, you will generate a electromotive force. You'll induce it in a conducting loop. If the magnetic field through that loop changes, and the equation for that is pretty simple. It's just the absolute value of the change in flux over change in time. So, the faster you change it, the more voltage you get, or the bigger size loop, because then you can have more flux pass through it, the more voltage you get, that sort of thing. But if we're talking about like a personal device, right? And using the Earth's magnetic field, we're really limited by the size of the loop that we can have and the weakness of Earth's magnetic field, right?
Yeah.
So
50 microteslas or whatever.
Yes, 50 microteslas. So you can have more voltage if you have more loops, more like turns of the coil, basically like a solenoid or a spring-like looking part of your electronics. But still, the amount of actual current that you can get going through your system is really, really, really tiny. So that's one challenge. And another one is just like, if it's, let's say, a wearable device, right? And you're just relying on your natural human movements through the magnetic field to charge up whatever batteries on it, it's really going to be unpredictable exactly like how and when you're going to make this current. You're going to be moving all over relative to the field, but it's not going to be like the alternating current coming out of your wall that has a nice repetitive, sine wave of power, as electrons go back and forth in this very regular rotation, it's going to be all sorts of like spikes and drops and dips.
Depending on where you are, depending on if you're going up a mountain or driving across a plane or in an airplane, it's all going to be completely different and unpredictable.
Yeah. It's funny you said depending on where you are. I love that because another really cool thing about the Earth's magnetic field, I don't think people realize, is you can tell where you are latitude based on how much the Earth's magnetic field is pointing down into the Earth, right?
Oh, because you're getting closer to the North Pole, which is the South Pole.
That's right.
It's going to pull down more.
That's right. At the magnetic poles, the Earth's magnetic field points straight down into the Earth at the North Pole, and then straight out of at the South Pole. And then around the equator, it's not perfect, the North and South Pole, but around the equator, it's almost parallel to the surface of the Earth, and then everything in between as you travel up and down the latitudes. So this is how animals like sea turtles actually can navigate. Like they have a way of sensing the dip of the Earth's magnetic field, and they can use that to figure out what latitude they're at.
Oh, that's neat. I wish I had that.
Or there's some bacteria that use this. They actually like attach themselves to like iron, right? And they incorporate this iron into their little bacteria bodies, and they sense, which way is up or down, even though they don't have eyes or anything like that, or a vestibular system like we do.
Wait a minute, Julian. You said that inside of my phone there wasn't a teeny tiny needle that told me where the compass was. But in these bacteria, they have a teeny tiny compass needle.
A teeny
tiny compass needle, which is so cute and cool.
They do. And they do better at like the bottom of lakes and stuff.
Sure.
Like that's a more ideal environment. So they use this sense of which way the magnetic field is pointing to follow it down to the bottom of the pond where they can do better. Yeah. Wow. I thought that was amazing.
That's so neat.
So yeah, the challenges are, can you actually generate enough current to like recharge a battery, and can you do it like, can you actually turn whatever crazy spikes in back and forth electricity you're making into direct current that you can use to recharge a battery? Because batteries are the DC of AC/DC.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
They shoot to thrill.
They only push. Yeah. They only push, current going in one direction. So they're direct current. So when you charge a battery, you need to also charge it with direct current. When you plug your battery charger, your phone into the wall, it takes that alternating current and it runs it through what's called a rectifier, where some diodes like change it, because diodes only let electricity flow in one direction. So you have some diodes that only let it go, in the positive direction. And then you have a capacitor that takes like the... kind
of evens it out.
The hills that you have. Yeah, and evens it out. So it's a nice steady electricity flow back into the battery that resets all the stuff inside, so then the battery can discharge.
Pushes
again.
The lithium ions back through the membrane.
The electrolyte,
the electrolyte back into the anode. Is it into the anode? Somebody's going to tell me I've got it backwards. I always get it backwards.
I don't know. Towards the anode. The anode's the negative side, and the cathode's the positive side.
It's always reverse of what you think. What I think it is every time.
I just remember cats are positive, so they're the cathodes.
Yeah.
And the cations. Anyway, so you actually did me a huge favor on this one, because it sounded like you were a bit of a battery expert just there.
Ooh.
I feel like you might be working on a battery episode for Uno Dos of Trace.
I am, yeah. Actually, I called a battery expert, Shirley Meng. She's a battery expert with the Argonne National Laboratory in Chicago. She's been studying lithium-ion batteries for 20 years, and so I called Dr. Meng, and Dr. Meng was happy to answer your question.
Well, I think for the micro batteries that we're doing for the wearables, that's doable. I do think that there is a possibility somebody will figure that out. Yeah. But for the electric cars, that's absurd, I think.
She used the show's name!
She said the name of the show!
So Dr. Meng says for mini batteries, micro batteries, but not for car batteries.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me, because like a car takes a ton of energy to move, and as we established, you probably can't get a ton out of the Earth's weak magnetic field, but for something really small, something wearable maybe. Mm-hmm. Sounds like Dr. Meng thinks it's probably going to get figured out. All the specifics of like how to actually charge it as you flail around and do cartwheels or whatever it is you're doing, all in the Earth's magnetic field. Somebody might actually figure out how to take that and translate it into some sort of stored energy.
That's cool.
For your wristwatch that'll tell you how many cartwheels you did. And it all comes full circle.
Like your wrist in a cartwheel.
Like you're cartwheeling.
That's great. Wow. Well, I'd like to thank 26 Matzo. I hope that we had a ball. Matzo ball, get it? Soup? Anyway. Can you wirelessly...
I was still thinking of magnets. I was like, how is this related to magnets? I'm not getting it.
Yeah. Can you wirelessly charge a device with the Earth's magnetic field if that device is a micro device? Sure. And who invented lawn? Sadly, the French aristocracy and then us. We did it to ourselves.
It was us the whole time.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of That's Absurd. Please elaborate. Make sure that you follow us wherever it is that you are listening right now so that you can get more episodes every other week. And also, make sure you come find us on social media. You can find the show at That's Absurd Show. We have a website, or we're on Instagram. You can also find Julian and myself out on the social medias. I'm at Trace Dominguez pretty much at all the socials. So whichever one you use, just give me a search. Julian, where can they find you?
I'm Huguet Out on pretty much all the socials. And if you have a question of your own you'd like to ask, you can submit it via our website. You can reach out to us on one of those socials, or you can go ahead and click the Notion form that we keep in the show notes and just submit it directly right through there.
That's right. This show was edited by Kyle Sisk. It's produced by me and Julian. So thank you so much for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, try not to, do any lawn stuff if you don't have to.
Yes. In the meantime, go drinking with your uncle and let us know what he comes up with.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one.